biggest difference between working for the public sector and the private sector is in the public sector, most people are really motivated by a mission. I think there is an unfair prejudice from your average person that the government worker doesn't work as hard or isn't as smart as someone in the private sector. And I have to say that was not my experience. I've actually been criticized a couple of times in my career that I'm too kind or I'm too nice, and I find that shocking. One of the best work environments I ever had was I had a team of data scientists who were all best friends, and they spent their weekends together. They all wanted to come into the office every day because they were excited about the work and they were excited about seeing each other and working together.
You're listening to Data Analytics Chat, where data meets career.
Welcome back to another episode of Data Analytics Chat, a podcast where we discuss the world of data, AI, and the careers shaping it. Today, I'm excited to welcome Linda Powell, the former Deputy Chief Data Officer, who has worked with leading companies such as BNY Mellon and Citibank. In today's episode, we'll explore her exciting career journey and discuss the topic of building AI without foundations. So Linda, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to have the conversation today.
Pleasure to have you on. So do you want to start off with sharing your career journey?
Sure. Mine's been not a straight path into data. I graduated from Rutgers University with a degree in economics, knowing that I wanted to do banking, and worked in internal audit for several years. And I've actually been surprised along the way how many people that ended up in data did start their careers in audit. And I think that's because it gives you a great foundation on controls and figuring out where are the needed operational paths for various processes. So I started in commercial banking quite a while ago. Then I moved over to the Federal Reserve for the majority of my career. I worked both the New York Fed and at the Board of Governors. And it was at the Federal Reserve that I moved from internal auditing into data management. Around that time, I also did a degree in database design and programming, and realized I hated writing code, but I loved the database design things. So that really pushed my career more towards the data management side because I just found it so interesting. Spent most of my career at the Fed, spent a couple of years at the Treasury Department after the financial crisis, and then at the CFPB for about 4 years, which was an incredibly fun stint. We went from having to build the entire tech stack to the metadata, and then the governance, and finally we had a great data science team by the time I left there to go to Citibank. So it was really fun to build the nuts and bolts and then get to do the analytics on top of it. Spent about 3 years at Citibank and then moved over to Bank of New York Mellon. So that's the path, always a bend towards data and also more of a bend towards the business side of things than the technology side, although absolutely need to have both to be able to do data.
Okay. Obviously, you've in both the public and private sector. How does that, is it different for you, or is it still the same problems?
So that's the question I get the most from people, because not everyone crosses between public and private sector. I have to say that they're surprisingly similar. The biggest difference between working for the public sector and the private sector is in the public sector, most people are really motivated by a mission. People join a government agency that has a mission that they feel passionate about. When I worked for the Fed, every day I went home from work thinking, wow, I've helped the economy today. Whereas when you're working for the private sector, it's a much more business-oriented motivation that you have on a day-to-day basis. You're trying to optimize the product, you're trying to optimize revenue. So in the private sector, you get a little bit more dispersion in the motivation because people have different passions around the same topic, whereas you're more aligned in the private sector because you're really focused on optimizing your returns and the shareholder returns. But people are people. Everybody wants to do a good job wherever they work. People tend to be motivated by similar things. They want interesting work. They want to get paid for their work, and they want to be appreciated. So in how you do the work, it's not all that different. And also the problems you encounter from a data point of view are relatively similar. The technology is similar, if not exactly the same. And how you tackle those problems is pretty similar.
I think it's fascinating. I bet every business is different, isn't it? Everyone has their own needs
Oh, yeah.
and wants. And it's always like, obviously, some businesses, like say, you work in financial services, they tend to want people that have worked in financial services, and similar with other industries. So how was it trying to transfer from public to private? Did people say no when you interviewed, or what was your? Because everyone's different, and there is
Oh,
people have their faults,
absolutely.
don't they? So it'd be good to get your thoughts on how you overcome this.
Yeah, I think there is an unfair prejudice from your average person that the government worker doesn't work as hard or isn't as smart as someone in the private sector. And I have to say that was not my experience. I honestly, the role where I worked the longest and most arduous hours was the 2 years that I was at the Treasury Department. I think I put in 14 hours a day and then 1 day on every weekend. And I left that job saying, I will never do that again. Because after 2 years, it was a little grinding. And I know people do that on Wall Street all the time. But I think there are people on both sides are intelligent and working hard. So when I was looking to go back to the private sector, I did get a lot of resistance. I would go on interviews and I would be one of the last couple people for the jobs. And I would get feedback after the interview process that they really liked you and they really thought you were the best candidate, but they were worried because you had spent so many years in government. They weren't sure that you could hack it. I had repeated interviews from saying that, and I just found it so surprising that that was the common perception about the government sector to the point where they would not hire me for a long time. And then the breakthrough role came at Citibank, where they were looking for someone with some public sector experience, and it was a great couple of years at Citibank.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating because it happens even in any industry, like in private, moving from say like financial services into food, so retail into financial services. Because I mean that just wouldn't happen. But I think it's more. I guess it depends on the individual, doesn't it? Any expertise, because also in the financial services, I mean they've been more open in recent years, in my opinion, because the legacy applications have had to get that knowledge in the business, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's true.
But actually, I guess yes, there is so much resistance across businesses. But it's funny how people get these thoughts.
Yeah. And it's funny, I had a conversation the other day with a friend talking about the challenges of working in government. And she automatically said, oh, the worst thing about working in government is that you can't fire people. And this is someone who had never worked in government. And I said, that's just not true. That is not the hardest part about working in government. I unfortunately fired several people You just have to go through the process. And if you've got a good, strong manager, they'll go through the process of letting people go who aren't right for the position. It's just work, as it is in the private sector. You have to put people on a performance plan and evaluate them. And it's a little bit harder to let people go from the government sector. What I found to be the absolute hardest part of working in the government sector was hiring, because there's so many rules and restrictions and preferences given to different communities that you can find the perfect person who's willing to come for a lesser salary. And it is sometimes almost impossible to hire them into a regular full-time government job. So it's funny how there's perceptions out there about what the problems are.
Okay, everyone's has different experiences,
Yeah.
isn't it? And so it's interesting to see. Okay, so if you had to pinpoint like one or two defining moments that changed your career, what would they be?
For me, it was always education related. So when I first went back after my undergraduate degree, I went back for a certification in programming and system design. I think I mentioned that before. And that really changed the trajectory of what I found interesting at work. And I focused more and more on the data side of work. And that led me, that was really my transformation to the data realm. And then the other big pivotal point was I went back and got my master's in quantitative finance after many years of working. And that became a pivot point also, because I was then able to understand and do the analysis that you need to do to really build on the insights for data. So I had many instances where I had a gut feel that something wasn't right after working with some statisticians and not trusting the results that I was getting. And it wasn't until after I went through my master's program and learned the math and the statistics behind the various models that I could understand why the models weren't right. There might have been an assumption that was bad, or it might have been just the wrong type of model that we were trying to use. And so that really pushed me into the analytics side of data management. And I find it incredibly useful. I don't actually use my math as often as I should. But when we're talking about AI models and AI algorithms and programs, I have the statistical foundation to be able to understand how that works and where the problems might be underlying some of the models.
Yeah, and I think that's just a common theme in today's market. I speak to a lot of leaders that individuals are like lacking on that mathematical, statistical model, like the theory side. So I guess for your
Yeah, I think that's so important. I'll just highlight that you can run your analysis through a model, but if you don't understand the complexities of the model and you just trust the results, you're potentially trusting bad results. You really need to understand how things are, the math behind it.
So did you just, was it more you being self-aware that you needed to get that knowledge, or did you get guided, or where did that sort of later academics come into?
So for me, it was always about curiosity. At the time that I went back for my degree in programming and system design, it was really, I'm dating myself here, but that was at the early stages of personal computing. And I was very curious about it. And I'm a classroom learner. I'm not as good as some people at just reading the books and learning it. So I went back to the classroom to learn more about it. I had also, at the same time, I did a certification in credit analysis. I thought at the time I wanted to be a credit officer. So I pursued academics in the areas that I found interesting. Finance was a little bit of convenience, opportunity, and interest. I had considered getting a degree in economics. There was a couple of things I was considering. For me, what pushed me over the edge for the quantitative finance was I was living in DC. George Washington University was one of the first universities to offer a program in quantitative finance, and I could walk to the classrooms after I got out of work. I had 2 young kids at the time and a full-time job, so I knew if I had to go home before going to class, I probably would have not made it to class. So I chose a university with a program that I wanted that was super convenient.
Forced you to study.
Yeah. I didn't go home. I just went straight from work to class.
Yeah, because it's obviously, I know you did that, but it's like similar to after work going to the gym, isn't it? It's hard. You got to get, it's like that extra force. So a lot of people do struggle, and I think it's obviously fair. But it's amazing you did it, because holding down a work, well, you had a job, another job with your kids, and then studying. So it's a lot.
Yeah. But it was a great 2 years. I'll say I missed the academic stimulation, but I sat for the first part of the CFA exam afterwards, thinking I'll continue with my education. And before I even took the exam, I was like, oh, I'm done. I need to go back to having a life.
So then, have you ever faced like a major career setback?
I don't think I know anyone who hasn't. Yeah, of course I have. I'll share an early career setback that I had that it took me years to emotionally get over it. But I think in hindsight, it was a good thing to happen to me. Early on in my career, I was really decided I really wanted to be a credit officer. And the big banks in New York all had these credit training programs back then. And I had started my career in internal audit at Chemical Bank. And I had applied for the credit training program, and I was told I was going to get in. But back then, your management had to approve a transfer within the bank. You couldn't just get the job and move. And they declined letting me go into the program. And I just thought it was the end of my career, the end of my life. I was so sad. I just thought, why do I bother? I'll just carry on with work. And in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't go the credit training program. It would have been a great learning experience, but I'm really happy with the path that I took. And I probably wouldn't have gone down the data path had I gotten into the credit program. So I try to look back now, like every time I hit a bump, and there's lots of them. And we're not human if we don't hit those career bumps. And I try to think about, okay, what door is it opening? If I'm not going to go through that door, what's the path that I should be taking? Sometimes I'm successful in that attitude, and sometimes I'm not.
Humans, I mean, like I said, when you go to that element, isn't it? It's like you're in sinking sand.
Oh,
like it's the worst thing ever. But then, obviously, now looking back, you probably think, yeah, it was nothing.
Yeah. I'm very happy with the path my career took. So I have no complaints.
Yeah, I think it's just you got to obviously realize that, and then you got to snap out of it as quick as possible. And like again, focus on the opportunities as opposed to like the negativity of not getting what you want in that period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, the market's highly competitive. What do you feel is giving you a genuine edge?
I'm going to go back to my curiosity. I think part of it is the luck of timing. I got curious about database design and technology and data at a time that it was growing. When I first started at work, they called me the metadata maven for a little while. And that was at a time when no one knew what metadata was. So I think it's been helpful that I've been on the frontier of the data management and data analytics trend. But it's also the curiosity and the willingness to go back and get further educated. on a lot of the topics. If I were 20 years younger, I'd be doing a data science program right now and beefing up my math and modeling skills even more.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot out there, isn't there? You've got the tech out there
Yeah.
you've got the obviously, and I think a lot of people do forget about the maths. I think it's probably the more important bit. That's not going to change.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's important is to not be afraid of not being good at things. And I guess that's a theme, for better or worse, in much of my life, that I will try something and I'll work towards something, even if I'm not good at it right away. I took up playing soccer in my 40s because a friend invited me. And I was terrible at first, but I was reasonably fast for a middle-aged woman. So I was valuable to the team in a different way, even though my foot skills were terrible. So it's also, don't be afraid of something. Just because you're not good at it doesn't mean you won't get better. And it doesn't mean you won't learn from it, because the key is the learning.
It's funny you say that. My mum did the similar thing. She started playing soccer, football later in her life as well. So
Oh, it's such a
it,
fun game. So much fun.
obviously touching on, no, obviously, you obviously touched on getting over that fear factor. And so I guess you would have been like the more like technical expert in your career. How did you push yourself into more leadership type work? Was it you get? Because that's a big challenge for individuals that we speak to is should they just fear they've got enough experience, they've got the right knowledge, whether they can do it. How did you overcome that sort of hurdle to get some knowledge? Do you like mentors, or how did you get? Is there anything in particular that stood out for you?
I think with most things in my life, if I don't know how to do it, I start by reading about it. So when I started playing soccer, I got a couple of kids' books out to learn all the rules in an easy way. When I had to do a marketing campaign at work, I never took any marketing classes. I went to the library and read every book about the marketing. And so with leadership, I did the same thing. I read a lot of the leadership books. And quite honestly, it's about being authentic and treating people. It's like the golden rules you learned back in grade school. You treat people the way that you want to be treated. And we're all motivated by similar things, but not exactly the same things. And so asking people, what do they want, rather than assuming what do they want? Treating people with respect and kindness. I've actually been criticized a couple of times in my career that I'm too kind or I'm too nice. And I find that shocking. I think it's important that we recognize that we're all humans bringing ourselves to work, and we all have lives that we're dealing with. And the more you find kindness at work, the more motivated you're going to be to go into the office and work. One of the best work environments I ever had was I had a team of data scientists who were all best friends, and they spent their weekends together. They all wanted to come into the office every day because they were excited about the work and they were excited about seeing each other and working together. And we moved mountains for a couple of years just because this team was so motivated. And I had a boss at one point who said, I can't believe you've got this team of data scientists working for a government agency. They could make so much more money if they went into the private sector. And the honest answer was, this was where they wanted to be, because they wanted to be together and they had interesting work. So I think leadership is about, I lead by example. And so if I'm honest with people and I have their best interests at heart, and if I don't know something, I'm honest about it and we'll figure it out together.
Mm. That's what you're saying that, because but then on the flip side, you get this perception that leaders should be this like tough, horrible person. I'm not saying horrible, but they're like strict. But I think, and you want respect from your team, don't you? And trust. That's the best bit. And because they're going to be more junior in their career, and they're going to have more questions. They want to be confident to come to you to ask questions and get an answer on them.
Yeah. And you can be firm and tough and demanding, but still be kind. One of the leadership roles I had, I was told after the fact that people joked about if they heard the phrase, "I don't expect to have this conversation again," they all knew, oh, that was really bad. That better not happen again. But I didn't have to yell at someone. We had a level of trust where I said, I don't expect to have to say this again, was enough that they knew that it was serious.
Again, I think it's I guess articulating in the right manner, isn't it? Okay. Good. Okay, so let's move on to the data topic. And I guess it's one that gets overlooked in the foundations in AI or data. But I do feel like it's gaining more momentum. There's more happening in this space, I think. And I think stakeholders are starting to realise that more needs to be done to get to get better results, really.
Yeah.
This is one. Oh, in your opinion, are businesses chasing AI for innovation, or are they just fearing being left behind?
I'm going to say it's probably both. There's a lot of hype about AI first, and you don't want to get left behind. And a lot of that is probably true. It's with any great innovation, if you're not figuring out how to use these new, really powerful tools, you probably will get left behind. And the people who are being the most successful with it, I think, are starting with strategy. Okay, what is my biggest problem that I need to resolve? And how can I use these tools to really help me be more efficient and more effective? Somebody who's just saying we need to do AI for the sake of AI is not going to be as successful as someone who says, hey, I've got people who are spending too much time taking notes in meetings or having meetings or doing these manual calculations. This is where I should focus my attention. So it's the folks that are really trying to drive the strategy with a new powerful tool that I think are being helpful. And I think with AI, the key is it's so much faster. Back during the era of big data, people talked about the 3 V's, which are volume, velocity, and variety. And during big data, it was all about volume. The volumes just skyrocketed overnight, and we needed the tooling to deal with the volumes. Now, with AI, I think it's about velocity because we're doing everything so much faster. And if you're calculating data faster and you're running things through your models faster, as humans, it's harder for us to keep up. And if there's errors or problems in it, we could be really far down the road before we identify those problems. So I think it's the velocity is what we need to figure out how to manage in the AI era. And it also might be part of the variety because now we can do analysis on unstructured data that we could never do before. And it's fascinating and it's awesome, but it's also a little bit scary because we're doing it so fast.
Yeah, and it's so much happening. If you just look at the last couple of years, things are just it's rapid. And I think sometimes it's starting to talk is people chasing shiny toys, and really you should be looking at where you are as a business. What's your current problem? You need to go back to business concepts, don't you? Like
Yeah,
what you guys are doing in business, because who knows what's going to be happening in 2 years' time, 4 years' time, 10 years' time. You need to said that you want to be focusing on what is your key problem now, and how can you solve it really, when it's not the other way around where people just try and look at tech and then trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, and I think starting with the solution is the wrong answer. It's always should be starting with the problem. Like I hear people talking about, oh, you can use AI for data quality. Great. But what's the problem that you're having with data quality? Is AI really the answer for that? Or is it something simpler? And I fear there's a little bit of a propensity to over-engineer things with AI. Many years ago, I was involved in a machine learning project where this was when machine learning first really became big. And people were, oh, we got to do a machine learning project. And they figured out how to analyze customer complaints about things using machine learning. And what we found was I could have a couple of data scientists write a few algorithms in a matter of hours that caught 99% of what the machine learning was catching. And the machine learning was a multi-million-dollar project for a few hours of a data scientist's time. I suspect we will have some over-engineering with some of the AI solving problems that could be solved more easily. But that's also part of the learning curve, I think.
So can you leverage AI without understanding the data foundations that power it?
I think that's dangerous because you don't know how the AI is interpreting the data. So I'm a fundamentalist with data. I think you have to have good data that's well defined in order to be able to use it at scale. If you're analyzing for the first time and you've got disjointed data, it can help you make sense of the data. But just like a human brain will make assumptions, the artificial intelligence will make assumptions. And those assumptions may or may not be better than the human brain's assumption, but they're still assumptions. So if I've got a data set with 10 different dates in it, I can definitely tell either as a human or as artificial intelligence that they're dates. And you can discern what the dates probably mean, but you may not be able to discern exactly what those dates mean just from looking at the data. You would need to know the processes that go into it. So if you don't understand the implications of your data, then you're bound to interpret it incorrectly.
Yeah. And then in that regard, do leaders misunderstand the relationship between AI and data then?
That's a great question. I don't know if it is misunderstand the relationship, or I think a lot of people don't really know how messy data foundations can be. When we tend to think of things on human terms. And so I often use the analogy of a library. My bookshelves at home, I can find any book. Doesn't really matter. I don't have that many. If you go to the local public library, there's a lot more books. It would take you a lot longer if they weren't organized with good metadata telling you exactly what shelf the book is on. But if you go to the Library of Congress, you could look at a lifetime and never find the book if it's not well organized and well documented. And so I think we think of data as we encounter it in our daily lives, and it's not as overwhelming as our business data truly is. So I think it's just a matter of realizing how complex our data can truly be. And it's not until you start trying to dig into a database that you can find out quickly how overwhelming it can be.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely complex. I think there's so much going on, isn't there, really? And it's challenging for businesses because there's so much. So what is the danger in skipping the fundamentals of AI then?
I think the dangers are you're doing analysis on potentially undefined data. And what we're learning about AI is if it can't find the facts that it's looking for, it will make them up. There's been lots of cases where it's trying to optimize for something. And so it will do what it needs to do to be able to optimize. One of my favorite cases There's two of them. One was there's a company out there, I forget the name of the company, that was doing software development, and the AI either accidentally or intentionally deleted an entire database from this company and then figured out how to cover up its tracks and lie about it, saying that it hadn't deleted the entire database. That seems a little crazy to me, but it's optimizing. So if you don't understand what could cause different results, you're going to end up with some crazy stuff. There was also a legal case where they ran some AI to do some of the legal analysis, and it turned out that it took a bunch of pieces, I think, from different case files and merged it to create a case that gave it the results they needed to optimize for that particular problem they were trying to solve. And then when someone dug into it, they found out that wasn't a real case. So I think the challenge is you have to understand the underlying data to ensure that you're getting real results, that it's not hallucinating.
Yeah, and I think you've worked in financial services, and that's an important sector. And even I guess if you look at other industries like pharma, data there is so much more sensitive, isn't it? As opposed to, and obviously we want to correct data across all industries, but different industries are going to have different impacts, aren't they?
Yeah, in the pharmaceutical industry, it impacts your health. And
Yeah,
personally, I think your health is, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I'd rather lose my money than my health.
yeah. But yeah, again, if there's massive, obviously, it could be the extreme, can't it? That industry.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there was an interesting article that came out recently about doctors using AI. And somebody did a study where someone had broken their hand, and depending on how you prompted the AI, it may or may not. They did a test of prompting the AI in 5 or 6 different ways. In a couple of the cases, it found the fracture, and in a couple of cases, it didn't. But the simplest prompt was evaluate this X-ray or this scan, and it came back with nothing. And so they found that the doctors who were starting to rely on AI are also not finding things when they're evaluating scans. So it's an interesting chicken and egg.
Yeah. I could say it's learning, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're still, it's going to get better and better. But again, you want that, the right foundations in place so you can overcome these some of them could be big problems
Yeah.
for people. But yeah, no, I think things will get better and better. And who should be responsible for ensuring AI is built on the right foundations?
It really needs to be a group effort. The business leaders need to ensure that they're getting good answers. And in order to get good answers, you need to have a good foundation. I think of it like if you're going to build a skyscraper in Manhattan, you don't want to build it on shifting sands. You want to make sure you have deep pilings. You want to make sure you have a good foundation. Otherwise, disaster happens. It's the same thing with data analytics. If you're building on poor quality or undocumented data, you're more likely to have structural problems with your analytics. The business leaders need to ensure it, but they need to partner with their CIOs and their chief data officers to make sure that they have good foundations.
And yeah, I think business and data tech, they are starting to integrate more from my expertise, dealing with businesses as well.
Yeah, I see it happening more and more. And especially AI, I think, is driving it. Like people are excited about AI and want to be able to use it and are hearing some of the horror stories. So they're figuring out how can we do this safely.
So then how would we shift the culture from like quick wins AI to like long-term capability building?
I don't know that you have to. I think in business, you're always going to have the desire for quick wins. And part of and as long as those quick wins come with a strategic plan on how to improve the foundations, I don't think you need to get rid of the quick wins. What I'm seeing in the AI world is that the companies that had good data foundations are able to leverage that to get quick wins. But if you don't have the sound data foundation right now, starting with a strategic plan, what's going to be most impactful for your company, build the foundations in that particular area to do a quick win in AI, and then build the foundations elsewhere so that you can have quick wins later on. But I think as human beings, we like our quick wins. We do not have a lot of patience for this will be great in 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. No, I agree. I think at the end, it obviously depends on projects and where you're at.
Yeah.
What happened if companies wanted to focus more on their sort of data foundations, pause their AI initiatives, and focus on becoming more data mature? Could they do that?
So,
Or
obvious. Yeah, that would, in a textbook world, that would be great. You get your foundations set and in good order. But I don't think you need to reset. I think you can do them both at the same time as long as you're strategic about it. You can't, the old phrase about you can't boil the ocean, but you can figure out what's the most important data that you have that you can leverage AI with and get that organized and in order, and then get your quick wins with AI there. I should also say there's a lot to be said for using AI to help you organize your data. You can use it to profile and make suggestions and organize data. You just have to be sure that it's right. It's trust but verify when it's making suggestions on how to organize things or when it's coming out with its analysis.
and then, so what would be a good starting point for someone to build their AI foundations?
Again, it goes back to what's the problem you're trying to solve. But the key steps are: one, is it in the technology that you need it to be in? If you're dealing with unstructured data, do you have easy access to it? Is it machine readable? Is it in the right technology? Has it been OCR'd? If it's structured data, is it in a structured environment that is easy to use? I'm going to say, as much as I love Excel as a finance person, it's a terrible database. And so folks who are keeping their data stored in Excel are going to run into challenges with trying to run AI on top of that. So the first step is make sure it's in the appropriate technology and storage facilities to really be able to enable your AI. And the second is to make sure that it's properly labeled and defined, whether you're dealing with structured or unstructured. Unstructured is a little bit harder, but you can set the parameters around what the data are and what the data aren't. And if it's structured data, you can tell me exactly what's every date mean, so that AI doesn't have to interpret it or hypothesize what these dates could be. So it's your technical structure and your metadata, I think, are the two key foundations.
Brilliant. Some great advice shared today. I really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your career journey, and obviously discussing AI foundations, which is growing in popularity.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun. Cheers.
You've been listening to Data Analytics Chat Podcast. Subscribe to our channel for more stories and insights in data and career.